All right, Saturday evening. Super excited here. We are going to be getting very close to finishing up Genesis 46 and 47 here. After that, we'll have about 3 more chapters. Man, I tried to get on last night, but I was so wiped out. I spent a large part of the day in the garage, and just kind of getting rid of old stuff and cleaning it out. And man, by the I spent most of the day in there. I was so tired by the end of the day, I just couldn't do anything. My mind just wasn't working. So, hey Rosalind, welcome aboard. So anyway, that's why I didn't come on last night. But anyway, we're gonna knock out 46 and 47 tonight, and a couple of interesting points to make, and then hopefully we'll be able to finish up tomorrow night. So, first thing I want to kind of start with is a recap of Jacob and his journeys, and talk about where all he's been, just to kind of give us a bit of a map here. All right, lots of people coming on. Tom, Kimberly, Mom, welcome aboard. Mom, Dad, glad to see y'all. So, if you kind of look back, just kind of a quick recap. It's in Beersheba that Jacob is living with Isaac and Rebekah and his brother Esau. Esau comes in and is famished and sells his birthright to Jacob. And it's right after that he ends up getting the blessing. And he tricks Isaac into giving him the blessing for the moving forward of the promise to God, or promise from God, the blessing that all the world would be blessed. Isaac is kind of saying, may God bless you in this, and may you be fruitful and multiply, and all of the things that kind of a father typically would pass on, generally to the eldest. Hey Stephen, welcome aboard. And so right after that, Esau is really mad and wants to kill Jacob. And so Jacob flees and goes towards Padan Aram. Well, he ends up stopping at Bethel. And Bethel is there. And that's where he kind of has the ladder or the stairs heading up into heaven. And that's where he receives the blessing from God, that he's supposed to be the next in line to fulfill the promise to Abraham. Remember, the whole point of the nation of Israel is to fulfill the promise to Abraham. That they're a vehicle to fulfill the promise. Their separate and apartness is to fulfill that promise. And so Jacob is the third in line to receive that. So anyway, that he stops at Bethel there. And he ends up in the city of Haran, which is in Padan Aram, and he spends 20 years there, 7 years working. He ends up marrying Leah. A week later, he ends up marrying Rachel and has to work another 7 years for her. And then he works another 6 years for some cattle and sheep and stuff to leave with some kind of wealth. So, hey Josiah, welcome aboard. We're studying Genesis chapters 46 and 47 tonight. So anyway, he flees. He kind of sneaks out while his father-in-law is out in the field, and he stops at Mizpah, and there he makes a treaty with Laban, and then he comes to Mahanaim, which is where he stops, and they send forward the message to Esau. And then Peniel is where the brook of Jabbok is, and that's where he wrestles with God. And kind of that's right like before where he ends up meeting Esau and all of them. And then he ends up building a house in the land of Canaan in Succoth, to kind of a brief house. He's not there very long. Hey Tracy, yes, Stephen, that's right. God never preserved Israel because of Israel. God preserved Israel to fulfill the promise to Abraham. That's exactly right. And that's a good verse that you pulled up too in Isaiah. Isaiah's been a pretty good study for you recently, hadn't it? You keep posting up from there. So anyway, he stops for a little while, builds some kind of sheds for his cattle for a little while, and then he ends up going to the land of Shechem. And then, of course, there was that whole problem with the 12 brothers. Well, not all 12 of them, but a lot of the brothers and their sister, Dinah. And they end up wiping out an entire city-state. Hey, Judy, welcome aboard. They end up wiping out an entire city-state because of what the young man did to their sister. And so Jacob flees from there. He goes to Bethel again, where he builds another altar, renews his vow to the Lord, and then he comes to Bethlehem, which is a little bit south of there, and Rachel gives birth to Benjamin there. So we're past the 20 years. Remember, Jacob is 60 when he flees, and so he's past 80 now when Benjamin is born to Rachel in Bethlehem. And then he eventually settles in Hebron. Hebron is where you have the kind of the family tomb, which is Machpelah, where Sarah is buried, Abraham is buried, Isaac is eventually buried there, Rebecca is buried there, and so they're there. That's kind of like the family land for a while. And this is where they are when you see all the things happen to Joseph. All of the dreams, the coat of many colors, his brother sell him into slavery and whatever. So that's all in the land of Hebron. And then that's kind of where we are at the moment in starting this whole thing in Genesis 46, is we're in Hebron. There's a famine in the land. Joseph's in Egypt now. He's the second in charge of everything. And Jacob and all of his family are in this land. So, Stephen, yes, you're very welcome. We are loving doing the study with you. So it's really, really cool to study through. Isaiah is just a fascinating book to begin with. So, Gary, welcome aboard. All right, so we're going to look at then Genesis 46 and 47. We're in the King James Version. I've got the ESV up for some modern English considerations and the original language as we need it. And so let's get started. Genesis 46, verse 1. And Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices unto the God of his father Isaac. So, Ruan, welcome aboard. So remember, Joseph has talked to Pharaoh about bringing his family, because of the famine, into the land of Goshen. And so Pharaoh's like, yeah, definitely bring him in here. Take these wagons and bring all the women and the elderly and the children and bring them in these wagons. And so he's got all these supplies. And so they get, the brothers get there and they load everybody up into these wagons and they come back to Beersheba. Okay, but I'm live, so you're just going to have to play at night. So they come back to Beersheba, and they offer sacrifices unto the God of his father Isaac. And God spake unto Israel in the visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said, I am God, the God of thy father. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. So God comes, reaffirms the blessing that he had given in the covenant that he had passed on to him. And he tells him, don't be afraid, go to Egypt, because it's in Egypt that I'm going to make of you a great nation. And there's some details here that a lot of times growing up, I would have Bible class teachers who would kind of skim over this. We wouldn't really pay attention to these. A lot of that's because I was much younger. I'm not getting on to anybody or complaining at all. I'm just saying that in my youth, when I was very young, these stories tended to contain a lot of details that as a child I wasn't ready for. And so it took being an adult and really digging into what some of these numbers meant, who these people were, where they fit into all of this, and really mapping out both the time and the space. And if you ever get a chance, you want to teach a good lesson to your kids, when you have them in maybe their tween years, or even as teenagers or whatever, get out a map of the Middle East and map people's, print out several of them and map out where all they traveled, and put dates and ages, how old were they when they were there, and stuff like that. And you'll start to see this kind of story through geography develop, and it's a fascinating way to teach it. And I think it's a way that a lot of students will really grab onto that information and hold on to it. I know that it works really well for me to do that. I'm a big map person when I'm writing in my novels and stuff like that. I love drawing maps. And so for those who are students like that like to deal with maps and understand things visually, having those maps and having those timelines work like that is really good for them to remember more of what's going on. So anyway, Jacob is told he's going to be made into a great nation there. And God says, I will go down with thee into Egypt, and I will surely bring thee up again. So here's the thing. Hey, John, welcome aboard. Here's the thing he says is, I will go down with you and will bring thee up again. Well, Jacob passes away in Egypt. So there's something to this problem. What is God going to do to fulfill this? Well, we see later that the bones of Jacob are brought back out and buried in the family tomb there at Machpelah. So Jacob rose, and Joseph shall put his hands upon thine eyes. Just saying that you'll see Joseph again is essentially what he's saying. And Jacob rose up from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried Jacob their father and their little ones and their wives and the wagons which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. Now here's the interesting thing. We've been talking about Benjamin as the youngest. We've been talking about him as kind of the baby brother of Joseph, but we're still in the 7 years of famine. Remember, all this is happening right around the second year or so. Well, they go and they get Israel, and this isn't time. A lot of time has passed. This is just a few months that we're talking about here, and you're going to find out, even though Benjamin is the youngest and is kind of the baby brother, he's already got 11 sons. So he's already married, and he's already got 11 sons when all this is happening. So that's a bit of a shock to people, because a lot of the times when you see Jacob will close your eyes, and the JP is so okay. So place his hands. What you're saying is put his hands upon your eyes. You're saying that's a phrase, Brian, that means that Joseph will be there when you pass away, I think is what you're trying to point at there, with whatever your translation says. Let's see, what is the ESV? I didn't even look at this ESV. I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes, is what the ESV says. So I think you're right there. I think that's a good point to make, is that means that not only will Joseph see you again, but he'll be there at your death. So a very good point, Brian. Thank you. But anyway, Benjamin was always presented to me when I look at like the Bible class materials and stuff. Benjamin was always shown as kind of a teenage boy, that he was relatively young, and that was to distinguish him from the brothers that were supposed to be older. Hey, Buck, welcome aboard. And the reality is he wasn't a kid. He wasn't a teenager. He actually had 11 of his own sons at this time, and I think 2 of them are twins. If the names are any indication, we sometimes name our twins where their names kind of sound the same, or they start with the same letter or something like that. So we'll see that with Benjamin, but he's not a kid. He's just the youngest brother, and so. Anyway, they took their cattle and their goods, which they had gotten in the land of Canaan, and came into Egypt, Jacob and all his seed with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters, and all his seed brought he with him into Egypt. So now here's an interesting thing. This is Jacob. His sons, we know he had 12, because that's like all over the place. But we also see here that Jacob had daughters. Does this mean that he had more than Dinah? The way that this is listed out, this is daughters and his son's daughters. Well, his son's daughters would be his granddaughters. So his daughters means that after Dinah, he ended up having more girls. And so there's an interesting bit there that we read about, and it's going to be important later when we come to some of the numbers here. Hey, Arthur, welcome aboard. Because we're going to count up all of the people, and it's not going to seem to match up. But so anyway, it's going to list all of the descendants here. And it says, these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt, Jacob and his sons. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. So we've got now Jacob and Reuben. The sons of Reuben are Hanok, Phalu, Hezron, Carmi. And the sons of Simeon, Jemuel, and Jamin, and Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanitish woman. So apparently there was a little bit of dalliance there. The sons of Levi, Gershon, and Kohath. And I want you to remember that name, Kohath. Not necessarily for tonight, but when we get into Exodus, Kohath is going to be important. Kohath is born to Levi, and he is in the land of Canaan when they move into Egypt. So he's there at Hebron, and he moves into Egypt with his father Levi. And Merari and the sons of Judah are and Onan, and Shelah, and Pharez, and Zerah. But remember, and Onan were wicked. They died, and the wife of was then married to Onan, but he died. They still didn't have any children, and so Shelah was supposed to marry her, but there's that whole thing with Judah and all that. And then there was Pharez and Zerah. And the sons of Pharez were Hezron and Hamuel. And then the sons of Issachar were Tola, Puva, Job, and Shimron. Now, that's not the same Job. Just coincidence of names there, because Job was his time was before Abraham, or like right around between Noah and Abraham kind of time there. But also I want to the sons of Judah. Remember, Shelah was supposed to marry the wife, but he was too young, and then Judah ended up with her, and she was pregnant. And so Pharez and Zerah are the twins that were born. One of them came out first and then pulled back and whatever. And then that's why it says the sons of Pharez, because it's listing Judah and his sons and then their sons. And so Pharez has Hezron and Hamuel, and that's why it's kind of this little odd kind of add-on here for Judah. So anyway, and Shimron and the sons of Zebulun, Sered and Elon and Jaleel, and these are the sons of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob in Padan Aram, with his daughter Dinah. All the souls of his sons and his daughters were 33. So that's half of everything he's going to bring into Egypt are from Leah. All right. And those 6 sons. And then the sons of Gad, Ziphion and Haggai, Shuni and Esbon, Eri and Erodi and Areli. And the sons of Asher, Jimnah and Ishua and Isui and Beriah and Sarah, their sister. And the sons of Beriah, Heber and Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, all right, whom Laban gave to Leah, his daughter, and these she bare unto Jacob, even 16 souls. All right, so now we've got 33, and now we're up to 16 more, so we're at 49. The sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, Joseph and Benjamin, and unto Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bare unto him. So we do not count Joseph, and we don't count Asenath, and we don't count Manasseh and Ephraim in this. Okay, even though these guys are listed here, we don't count them because they don't come from Hebron to Egypt. That's not part of the 66 souls here. And the sons of Benjamin. So here's where Benjamin kind of, oh, I'm not a kid. Benjamin were Bela and Becher and Ashbel and Gera and Naaman, Ehi and Rosh and Muppim and Huppim. See, Muppim and Huppim I think were twins, and Ard. And that's solely based on their name, by the way. I don't have any other indication other than that. But just Muppim and Huppim have the similar sounding name, so that sounded like they were twins to me. These are the sons of Rachel, which were born to Jacob. All the souls were 14. Okay, so from Rachel and counting Joseph and Benjamin's kids, that's 14 total. But remember, 4 of those we're not going to count, so we're at 10, so 59. And the sons of Dan, Husham, the sons of Naphtali, Zaziel and Guni and Jezer and Shillem. And these are the sons of Bela, which Laban gave unto Rachel his daughter, and she bare thee unto Jacob. All the souls were 7. So that puts us from 59 to 66. All the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt, which came out of his loins, besides Jacob's sons' wives, all the souls were 66. So that's 66. That 66 there is only what we were counting here. 66 is the sons of Jacob and their sons, the people who are listed here, minus Joseph and minus Joseph's family. All right, but there are daughters that are not listed here. There are granddaughters that are not listed here. There's a lot of people that Jacob is bringing with him, because it says it doesn't count the names. It's the 66 here is not counting the wives of all of these sons and grandsons. That's not part of this counting. It's just counting the 66 is just counting the specific direct descendants of Jacob. And so anybody who tries to come at you and say, well, that's inconsistent, the Bible has a contradiction, it had to be way more, but it only says 66. So it explicitly tells you that. It's not counting all of the people that came in. So we're well over 100 people at this point that are coming into Egypt with Jacob, with Israel, to settle there. And so out of those, we're going to have a great nation. And again, I just want to remind you, go back up to Levi, his second son, Kohath, is important. Kohath is important, and we'll reference him again when we get into Exodus. Okay. Let's see here. Verse 27, and the sons of Joseph, which were born him in Egypt, were 2 souls. All the souls of the house of Jacob, which came into Egypt, were 70. And he sent Judah before him unto Joseph to direct his face unto Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. So Judah goes ahead to kind of work things out with Joseph. Where's everybody going to go? Where are they going to settle? And Joseph made ready his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father to Goshen, and presented himself unto him, and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. So Joseph and Jacob finally get to come back together. The beloved son and the father finally get to meet again, and they again, you have this level of joy. It says here that they wept a good long while for being disconnected for so many years, and all the things that had happened since then. So Israel says, verse 30, and Israel said unto Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen thy face, because you are yet alive. And Joseph said unto his brethren and unto his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, my brethren and my father's house, which were in the land of Canaan, are come unto me. And the men are shepherds, for their trade has been to feed cattle, and they have brought their flocks and their herds, and all that they have. And it shall come to pass, when Pharaoh shall call you, and shall say, what is your occupation? That you shall say, thy servant's trade has been about cattle from our youth even until now, both we and also our fathers, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is an abomination unto the Egyptians. So, verse 27, what did I just, 3 scores? Oh, yeah, totally. So all the souls of the house of Jacob which came in Egypt were 70. So that's 70. but still, there's people. What it's doing is it's leaving out Joseph, but it also leaves out all of the wives. So there's definitely got to be more than just the 70. We're not just leaving out 6 women. We're leaving out quite a bit of people, not to mention all of the servants and whatnot that were there as well, in terms of being servants of the house and people that like the handmaids and all of that kind of stuff. So my point here is don't get caught up in somebody trying to say that there's an inconsistency here, because there is a way to look at it and understand it, that those numbers refer to only very specific people, not to everybody. Yeah, way more than 70. Exactly right, Brian. And yes, Mom, the Egyptians, I don't know that they hated them. They saw them as unclean or an abomination, which is not the same thing. If they hated them, they definitely would not have allowed Jacob into Egypt at all. But what Joseph is doing here is he's saying, when Pharaoh asks you what you do for a living, tell him you're shepherds, because the land of Goshen is the best land for cattle. And so if you tell them that you're shepherds, be honest, and if you tell them that you're shepherds, they're going to set you apart into this land, which is really good for you, but that they don't want to intermingle with you. And so that's what this whole thing playing out here at the end of 46 is about, is them kind of getting their own section of Egypt to live in apart from the Egyptians. Because remember, there's kind of this whole separation thing that they have been trying to maintain. What I find interesting here is we don't know where the wives of Jacob's sons come from. Did he keep up with that thing? Well, we see that in Dinah's case, there is a little bit of an implication that they didn't marry from the land of Canaan. We also have in this list, going back up to, where is it? We just passed it. Yeah, so the sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and then Shaul, the son of a Canaanitish woman. So that indicates that the others were not, that they didn't marry Canaanite women. But this one guy, Shaul, actually is of a Canaanite woman. So there's implication enough to say that they kept up with that they kept themselves separated, but particularly separated from the Canaanites. And it was the Canaanite nations that were going to receive God's wrath. And so that's what they were supposed to keep themselves separated from. But coming into the Egyptian thing, you still have this kind of separation that's maintained. They don't. Joseph, of course, marries an Egyptian woman, and then you have this period where the sons and the grandsons and even the great grandsons are kind of there and in the land of Goshen. But then there's a transition that happens between Genesis and Exodus where their fortunes shift. So they go from being accepted and favored because of Joseph to slaves. And it's a rapid change. It's not, a lot of people look at the changes being very long over 4 centuries, and that's not the case at all. We're already halfway through the 430 years at this point, and I'm going to show that when we get into Exodus. So that's why I told you to remember Kohath. Kohath is important. All right, and so anyway, here in the verse 34, just wrapping up the chapter, Joseph says, "Tell Pharaoh that you have been shepherds from your youth, that you may dwell in the land of Goshen." That's the purpose of telling Pharaoh, "Hey, we've been shepherds, we've been cattlemen from our youth," is so that they would get the land of Goshen, just to confirm what Joseph and Pharaoh had kind of already worked out. This is all already pre-agreed upon, but now they're just kind of formally settling it, if you will. That brings us to 47. Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, "My father and my brethren and their flocks and their herds and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen." And he took some of his brethren, even 5 men, and presented them unto Pharaoh. These are kinsmen. That word brethren there doesn't necessarily mean brothers, but brethren is, he just takes 5 kinsmen, presents them to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to his kinsmen, "What is your occupation?" And they said, "Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers." So some of these are grandsons that Joseph is bringing, grandsons of Jacob. So we are, our fathers are, and Jacob is. And they said, "Moreover unto Pharaoh, for to sojourn in the land are we come, for thy servants have no pasture for their flocks. For the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen." So Pharaoh says to Joseph, "Your father and your brethren are come to thee. The land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell." Now remember, Pharaoh still looks really, really favorably on Joseph. Joseph saved Egypt. Pharaoh is really, really like, Joseph is the man. So for him to hear about Joseph's family coming in, Pharaoh's got to be like really welcoming. "Oh, welcome, your son has done so much for Egypt. You are welcome here. Take the best land." And there's just this kind of good will all the way around at this time because of all that God through Joseph had done. And it's what God is doing to get them settled into Egypt, where God said to Jacob, "I will make of thee a great nation." So there's this goodwill. There's no trepidation. Everybody is on the up and up. Everybody is happy. Everybody is feeling good about the situation. So there's no ill will here or subterfuge or anything. It's just welcome to Egypt. And so Joseph, the land of Egypt is before thee, and the best of the land make thy father and thy brethren to dwell. In the land of Goshen let them dwell. And if you know any men of activity among them, that is, guys that are really good, basically, Joseph, if you have any that are like you, then make them rulers over my cattle. So Pharaoh wants these guys to, "Hey, if y'all are really good at your job, I want you to oversee my cattle too." So he's given them positions of authority. This is kind of like what happened in Babylon. When the captives were brought into Babylon, then Nebuchadnezzar set the best and the brightest up over portions of his kingdom, set them up as wise men. We see this with Daniel and his friends. So anyway, verse 7. Let's see. Okay. Verse 7, Joseph brought Jacob his father and set him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Jacob, "How old are you?" And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years." Yeah, capable, definitely. And so Jacob is, remember, he's 130 years. So calculating that back, he's 60 when he heads to Padan Aram. 70 years since then have passed. He spent 20 years in there in Padan Aram. So now from Padan Aram, after that 20 years, he's 80. And then from there to Egypt now, another 50 years have passed. This is the timeline that we're seeing here. And so he's 130 years. He says, "Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers and the days of their pilgrimage." So he's like, I'm 130, and I have not lived as long as my father and his father before him. Remember, Abraham lived to be 175, and Isaac lived to be 180, and Jacob's only 130, and he knows he's nearing to death. It's not immediate, but he's pretty close to it, and he knows he's going to die here in Egypt before God brings him back out. So, verse 10, "And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph placed his father and his brethren and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded him." Now that word Ramses is a word that kind of the media, the movies, it's been a hyped up word that has been associated with Pharaoh. You see in like the movie Prince of Egypt, Pharaoh is supposed to have been called Ramses, but here in the Bible, Ramses is a land. It's the land of Ramses. It's not necessarily a person here. So I want to look real briefly over. Yeah, so it's just the land of Ramses, but it's not there's no indication there that that's actually Pharaoh's name. So I think that the movies there kind of conflate those two without need to do that. So anyway, they're in Goshen, and Joseph nourishes his father and his brethren and all his father's household with bread according to their families. And there was no bread in all the land, for the famine was very sore, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan fainted by reason of the famine. So here we are. We're in basically year 3 of this whole thing is transitioning. Now that everybody's settled, we're now going to transition into what's happening in Egypt for the rest of these 5 years. And so there's no bread, and nobody can grow any crops. Nothing's growing. And so, verse 14, Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the corn which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So what that means is that everybody was coming to Egypt, and they were spending all their money. Like, there was no money left anywhere in Egypt or in Canaan because of this famine. But remember, Egypt is being taken care of right now because they're kind of this umbrella or shelter for Israel and his family. But Canaan, the city-states of Canaan are being weakened by this. They're losing, they're hungry, their cattle, their sheep are not doing well, and they're having to spend all their money just to stay alive. So Canaan is being weakened during this time where Egypt is not. You're going to see Pharaoh actually flourishes, and there's a bit of a lesson here as well. You're going to see Egypt as the people of Egypt are weakened, whereas Pharaoh grows stronger momentarily. But I think God's will is that he's doing this on purpose as well. And so you're going to see this kind of play out, and there's this kind of a brief look at despotism and tyranny and what kind of government control of everything or socialism really looks like. This was what do you call it? Where the government owns all this is kind of a communist type situation here because of a crisis. So there's this crisis going on, far more severe than what we're going through right now, but you do see some economic impact to this, and you see what happens when the government controls everything, and you see what is happening to the people. They end up giving up everything that they own to the government just to stay alive. So just an interesting coincidence that we're kind of going through this while we're going through this, if you catch what I'm meaning here. So all the money was gathered up from both Egypt and Canaan for the corn which they bought, and he brought the money to the Pharaoh's house. And when money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, they're out of money, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For there's money fails, there's no more money." So Joseph said, "Well, give me your cattle, and I will give you for your cattle if money fails." So here Joseph is saying, all right, I don't want just your money, now I want your means of production. So they're trading up their capital. Here is a huge portion of their ability to provide for their families is their cows and their sheep and their donkeys and their camels and all the livestock that they have. That is a huge part of wealth during this time. That's why they traded in it. That's why Jacob wanted all of the sheep and the cattle that he got from Laban for those 6 years. He worked for that because that made him very, very wealthy. Well, they run out of money. Well, now they're about to give up their means of producing money by giving their cattle. And Joseph's And so they brought their cattle to Joseph, verse 17, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses and for flocks and for the cattle of their herds and for the asses, and he fed them with bread for all their cattle for that year. So we go through another year, and there's no money, so now they're giving up all of their animals. And when that year was ended, they came unto him a second year and said unto him, We will not hide it from my lord, how that our money is spent. My lord also has our herds of cattle. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Whew. That's it. And they still got a couple of years to go left in this famine. Wherefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread. Buy us and our land for bread. So they are selling their land and themselves into slavery, essentially, servitude, bondservant status, to be able to eat. If the crisis here continues, what will we do? What will we feel like we are forced to do? What will we give up? What will we give up in terms of liberty? What will we give up in terms of sovereignty? What will we do just so we can live? This is a very powerful message here. And I think that a lot of people need to be reading this and understanding what exactly is going on. These guys are facing a really nasty crisis, and they're to the point where they're just selling themselves and their land. They have nothing left. There is nothing left at all. Hey, Bobby, to give up. So hopefully they'll be fed up until the end of the famine. Here we're not facing anything near close to that, and we're already starting to see the fringes of our liberties being taken away. Some stuff that I believe to be completely unconstitutional taking place right now. So be wary of that. Is it worth giving up your liberty? Give me liberty or give me Taco Bell. I don't know. Is that what the saying says? No, give me liberty or give me death. But anyway, verse 20, buy us in our land. So verse 19, buy us in our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh, and give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate or empty. So in other words, do you want to see us all die? Yeah, as to liberty, no thing. Yeah, I agree 100%. And they're like, what's the point? You're gonna just let Egypt die? It's gonna be empty. There's not gonna be anybody to rule over. And so he says, here, give us seed, give us bread, give us food, and you can have our land, and we will be your servants, be your slaves. And so Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field, because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. So here you have one king, one guy. The state now controls it all, every bit of it. And as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt even to the other end thereof. So not only do they give up their land, now Pharaoh is moving them about to where he sees fit. They can't live on that land anymore because it's not theirs. What are they going to do out there? And the land's not, you can't do anything with it right now because of the famine. And so he moves them into the cities, and they're going to be the servants of the elite of Pharaoh's house. Only the land of the priest did he not buy. So there's your magi, there's your oligarchy, the guys that were kind of behind the scenes keeping Pharaoh in power. For the priests had a portion assigned them of Pharaoh, and did eat their portion which Pharaoh gave them, wherefore they did not sell their lands. So they already had stuff coming from the government. Oh yeah, totally sounds like China. Absolutely sounds like China and any other communist nation that has ever existed, really. This is the other side of things. This is the opposite of what America was founded to be, is a total oligarchy, a dictatorship where the government owns and controls everything. So Stephen says, we are not a generation that has come out of a revolution. We tried to deprecate or depreciate the commitment of the revolutionists. The founders just came out of the revolution. They knew the value of the Second Amendment. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. 100% there. I'm one of those that any law concerning firearms is an infringement. It's an infringement on the right to bear arms. It's a limitation. Fringe is the outer edges, right? When you talk about the fringe of a garment, you're talking about the outer edges. So any law you make is eating away at those outer layers, and then you're getting into eventually where there's no cloth left at all. So here, this is kind of what happened during these years of famine. Pharaoh personally grows very, very rich, where Egypt ends up selling everything. All of their private property is now owned by the government. Their very bodies are now capital owned by the state. And that is absolutely what communist looks like. And as Brian said, that is absolutely what China is like right now. So it's not a new thing. Humans don't have the capacity to do new things. Humans continue to rehash old things, and if we don't learn history, we're doomed to repeat it, right?
Dad,
yes.
I finished my home in Minecraft.
That is awesome. I'll take a look at it when I'm done, okay? So verse 23, then Joseph said unto the people, behold, I have bought you this day and your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the increase that you shall give the fifth part unto Pharaoh, and 4 parts shall be your own, for seed of the field, and for your food, and for them of your households, and for food for your little ones. So here he's saying, all right, you've given to the state. Now the state's going to take off the top. We're going to take a fifth of that, and you get to keep the other 4 parts of seed for you to grow new crops, for you to feed your family, and for you to feed your households and your little ones. So remember, Joseph is a benevolent dictator. Yes, there's exactly right. Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. Man is not capable of original thought. I've been saying that for decades now. But yes, exactly so. You have a benevolent Pharaoh who's taking care of his people, right? Let the government take care of you. The government's going to provide. The government will give you all that you need. And that's the era that they're in. This is the beginning of the communist state. Well, what happens when you get a ruler who's not Joseph, who's not benevolent in there? And we're going to see that's exactly what happens, and that's what Exodus. That's exactly right, Stephen. So it's interesting because you don't think of these things when you're a kid. You know these things happen, but you don't see them through the lens of current events or more recent history or anything like that. You don't understand them in the context of nations today and the way that nations operate and economies operate and stuff. But when you're an adult and you see these things and you read about these things, you're like, oh wow, that's like totally China or communist Russia, or you look through all of the dictators that are from recent decades, recent centuries, and it's just mind-blowing how much they parallel each other. Not that the Bible is prophesying these things, but that the Old Testament really gives us a picture of humanity, and really a humanity without God, right? Because Pharaoh doesn't believe in God. But you have a picture of what humanity looks like and why we need a God. That's what the Old Testament really is about, is to show us why we need a God. And part of that here is, yeah, you got a good Pharaoh now, but he now owns everything because you were hungry and you gave up everything to the state, thinking that the state was going to provide for you and protect you. And that when the state controls and owns everything, just like that, the state can take it away. So that's why I have a huge problem with property taxes, by the way. And they said, thou hast saved our lives. Let us find grace in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants. So they're all excited about having given up everything, including their liberty. And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt unto this day that Pharaoh should have a fifth part, except the land of the priests only, which became not Pharaoh's. So this was perpetual. This was the law of the land now. And so Israel, and it's a tax, but it's a kind of a benevolence in the sense that he didn't have to. He owns it all. He owns them. He owns their children. So there's this perpetual slave ship now, but because Joseph is a good guy, he makes the law to where they get a fifth, or Pharaoh gets a fifth of it, and they get the other 4/5. Oh yeah, man hasn't changed one bit. We still do the same stupid over and over and over again. I mean, it is just amazing how utterly willfully stupid we are, because and this is in generalities. An individual, what does Men in Black say? A person can be smart and courageous and do all these wonderful things, but people are stupid. They are scared and frightened, and they make bad choices. And we see this at the national level. Nations make really, really bad choices. The people, generally speaking, make really, really bad choices all the time, over and over and over again. And we're doing it again. We're right back to it. We're here again. And so hopefully we'll have some individuals who will, and I say that, and I'm pointing to myself here. I'm going to worship tomorrow. The stay-at-home order doesn't override God's command. Now that's not to say that if there's some elderly that might contract the disease and could die from it, you should go out as well. But I'm not, and I'm not sick. I'm not going to get other people sick. And so I'm going to go out and I'm going to worship as God commanded. And so, I'm not going to give up my liberties. And if that means I have to fight and die, if we end up with another revolution, I don't think we're going to get there. But, that's kind of where we are. We see this from time to time. There's people who are in their cars. They're worshiping in their cars, doing the social distancing thing, but they're going to gather together, and the preacher's kind of preaching there. Well, they all got tickets written to them. You have another guy out at the playground with his daughter. Nobody else is around. Gets arrested in front of his little 6-year-old. The government is just itching to grab more power all the time. And if we don't stand up against that and fight back, even if we just are doing it on principle, it's to keep that government in bay. The Constitution is there to limit government. The whole purpose of the Constitution is to protect the people of the United States from the government of the United States. So we've got to stand up for that. Otherwise, we're going to end up like these people here in Egypt. So anyway, I'm going to try not to digress too much into what's going on today, but the parallel there is obvious, and it's not one that the Bible is attempting to make, but just because mankind is dumb and we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. All right, verse 27, and Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions therein. Wait, Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, and they... So this is the first time we ever hear of Israel mentioned as a nation. This is not Israel the person, this is Israel the nation. And they had possessions therein and grew and multiplied exceedingly. So not only did we come in with well over 70 is the stated number, but we know there's way more than that. They come in with this. Now they're multiplying rapidly. During this time period where everybody else is selling themselves off as slaves, these guys are doing very, very well. They had their possessions and grew and multiplied exceedingly. So they're not in the same boat with everybody else. God's taking care of them. And Jacob, so there's the man, lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So he dies when he's 147. So the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. And the time drew nigh that Israel must die. Now that's the man. Israel must die. And he called his son Joseph and said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh. So here we come back to this under my thigh. Remember when the servant was going out to find a wife for Isaac. He did that with Abraham. And so here again, we have this idea of this, swear to me or put yourself under my authority kind of thing here. And deal kindly and truly with me. Do not bury me, I pray you, in Egypt. So Jacob is making Joseph swear to him, don't bury me in Egypt, but I will lie with my fathers, and you shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place. So that's Machpelah, where Sarah and Abraham and everybody else is buried. And he said, I will do as you have said. So Joseph says, yeah, I'll take care of it. And he said, swear unto me. And he sware unto him, and Israel bowed himself upon the bed's head. Okay, so here is the promise that's made. Well, these guys are going to be here for a while. Jacob is going to die at 17 years. So we're past the famine now. Remember, they came in, there were 5 years left. 5 of those years, so 12 of those years he lives when the famine is gone. And so after those 12 years, he passes away. But they're still going to be there for what's essentially almost 200 years after that point. And so that's an interesting thing that we see actually fulfilled. God told Jacob, I'm going to see you go down. I'm going to make you a great nation, and I will bring you out. He does. He does exactly that. So the body of Jacob, you'll see in Exodus, is brought out, and so is the body of Joseph. Jacob is buried in Machpelah, carried around the wilderness for 40 years. They wander around with his dead body all that time. So, hey, Linda, welcome aboard. You're catching us here at the end. You'll have to go back, I guess, and watch it on the rerun. So anyway, that's the chapters for tonight, 46 and 47. I'm hoping to be able to get the last 3 in. I might try to start a little bit earlier, maybe like 8:30 or so. Don't hold me to that. My schedule is not anything like concrete. It's more like quicksand. But I will attempt. I will at least try to give 30-minute notice or so to get us started, and so we can get through the last 3 chapters here and finish Genesis up. And I'm excited. Been excited to go through this with you guys, but I'm also excited to be able to move into Exodus. I think I didn't ever get the poll up, but everybody has been communicating to me they want to do Exodus next. So, and that's perfectly fine. It's logical. So, thanks, Stephen. Stephen said, by faith, Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the departure of the children of Israel and gave instructions concerning his bones. Yeah, so Joseph did the same thing. And we'll read about that in Exodus as well. So, all right. Well, that's it's been a great run. Thank you, Stephen. It has been a lot of fun for me. This is probably the 4th time I think I've done a verse by verse of Genesis. I did one when I was a kid, one when I was in college. I did one with my wife, just her and I, in a personal Bible study back in Texas. So that was back in the early 2000s, and now this one. And so and I mean, like, not just me. I mean, me studying with people. So, well, that's fine. I mean, Jacob and Joseph both do the same thing. So, yeah, glad to have you, Kimberly. I'm glad you guys are joining in on this. So, for as long as I can, I'm just gonna march through. Like I said, I'm probably gonna do the books of law, and then once we get to Deuteronomy, I might hit some important highlights in the books of history. I don't know if I'll do a verse by verse of those. I might. We'll see when we get there. That's a long ways off. But I'm very, very interested in getting to the books of prophecy. But I also want to do the books of wisdom too, because I've only done one time where I've done verse by verse with other people, and that was in college, and so it's been a while. I want to go back and do another verse by verse of the books of wisdom, especially Psalms and Proverbs. So, but anyway, it's 10 o'clock. That's my hour's up. I got to get the little one in bed. So thank y'all for tuning in. Feel free to share if you've been edified by this, and I look forward to studying with you guys some more. Have a good night.